project here in Jasper and the benefits that it has in the community. As you've heard from the testimony here, I know y'all been working on this project for 8 months. Y'all been looking at it. Y'all established a need. Connected Nations, DebtCog previously done a study, established a need that there was limited fiber options, limited high-speed, reliable internet available in Jasper, and Mayor and Council had a desire to go out and try to find a way to deliver that project to the community. But as we've heard previously today, there's been some concerns and ongoing deliberation with the project. So on March 22nd, I sent an email out to the council after the original contract with Kramer was tabled, recommended maybe that we pull back a little bit and look at different procurement methods, different ways to deliver the project, to be able to address the residents' concern through reducing the city's long-term risk and exposure, bringing in an operator and manager, identifying exactly what those costs are going to be, exactly what those options would be, what the accessibility would be like across the community, what the affordability, would there be an affordability component to the community, and what that would look like. And I heard a lot of positive feedback from the mayor's council after I sent that email. So I put together a little diagram or a handout today for y'all to go through, establishing what is a public-private partnership. First off, I do want to say, in working across the state, this is how I believe that most fiber to the home broadband projects are going to be delivered as we move forward, especially with the amount of grant funding that will be coming down in the future from the federal government once they figure out how to do that. Public, yes sir.
Excuse me 1 second. And I appreciate you saying how you're saying it, because most people don't understand. And a lot of people they're not hearing, all they're hearing is broadband. And I appreciate, and please, in your what you're saying, make sure people understand that what they're looking for is not just broadband, because that's all people think.
Yeah.
It's just broadband. They don't understand the application, what they're trying to do with it. And it's not just like my colleagues will tell you up here, it's not just on the phone, they're talking about fiber, okay? You gotta make sure that people understand what you want to, what you're trying to produce here.
Sure.
What type of service you're trying to produce here, so people can understand that. If people don't understand it, naturally you're gonna get some pushback on it. So you need to make sure that people understand what you're trying to do. If it's fiber, say that.
Yes, sir.
Make sure that people know that, not just pole attachments or whatever. Make sure people know what we're trying, what type of product, what type of service we want to produce for them and why.
Yes, sir. A fiber to the home broad internet service is much more robust than what we've been accustomed to in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, where you originally, when the internet came about, it was a telephone connection, and it went to DSL, and then there was copper connections, which is how you receive your cable TV. But the gold standard for how to receive internet, and the reason why all across the nation you see these initiatives in rural cities and counties is the lack of fiber. Fiber is the gold standard on how to deliver internet to the home.
Why is that?
Because it's fully scalable. The speeds aren't constricted by the technology or the copper that's going to the house or the phone line that's going to the house. So once the fiber's in the ground, you can offer speeds today of a gigabit coming to your home, and that's what Jasper would like to pursue, is a symmetrical gigabit fiber to the home network. That means not only do you get a gigabit coming in, but you can also send a gigabit out. That's important because of all the connected devices you have in your home now. You have Ring doorbells, you have iPads, you have iWatches, you have thermostats. Everything in your home is connected to the internet, and if you don't have the proper speeds and availability coming in your house, you won't be able to fully utilize the technology that's available to you. But more than just things inside your home, there's opportunities for workforce training, education. COVID proved that it's critical infrastructure to be able to have a high-speed, reliable internet access at your home whenever everybody went home to learn, work, and educate themselves. Telemedicine is a huge trend across the nation. We see that a lot in underserved communities where they may not have a hospital down the road, but they can pull up their iPad and they can talk to their doctor because they have high-speed fiber internet coming into their home, and that's what it means. It can create. We heard the comments earlier about in an economic downturn, why spend this money? Because fiber can be an economic upturn for a community. It helps the businesses that are here today conduct their business more efficiently and better, and can also help you recruit new businesses coming into the community that may not be able to, that may be reliable on, or they may rely heavily on high-speed internet, but that's not available and they can't move their product out. That's why symmetrical gig connection is so important. They may have to look in other communities. So back to what I was saying before that is I believe public-private partnerships are going to see, or is how these projects are going to be delivered across the nation, across the state. And some of the original American Recovery Act grant funds that came down after COVID, they spelled out that cities that were going to utilize those funds to deliver a fiber to the home project had to partner with a private internet service provider to operate and maintain that. And I think that language is also going to be in future grant funds that come down the line. So I think it's natural that you consider this as an option. And whenever the city of Jasper got ready to start on this project, the most common procurement method across the state for any city or county is to design it, bid it, and then build it. And that's how cities and counties have built parks, streets, water, sewer for years. And it's how a lot of cities and counties will continue to build infrastructure. In 2010 or 12, I can't remember, the state legislature created laws to allow public-private partnerships to become a state-allowed procurement method. They've been around for a long time before that. They were originally started in major infrastructure projects. I think some of the outer loops around the major metro areas. A private company would come in and build that, and they would toll that road for a certain number of years. They would generate revenue off of it, and that's how they would get a return on their investment. But they would partner with a public entity like TxDOT to put it in their right-of-way. TxDOT would own the land, and ultimately they would own the roadway after, say, a 50-year concession on that project. But public-private partnerships have evolved to allow for different projects like this, where there's a demonstrated need. The city has resources to be able to apply towards that, whether they be internal funds like the city of Jasper has, or for some communities, grant funds. And then also to partner with a private provider to operate and maintain it, so that there's the long-term risk of having to hire employees, maintain it, having to hire the equipment, the trucks, and all of that can be put on a third party. And then there's a fee agreement or a revenue sharing agreement between those two entities that allows each one to be able to meet the needs outlined in the agreement before you ever go to construction. And that's kind of where we are today, right? We heard the first gentleman that came up today, has a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions to be answered. And I think evaluating, if the council chooses today to continue to evaluate this and say, hey, look, we really think that a public-private partnership, when we get through the presentation today, is the proper method to deliver broadband to the community, then you have a chance to pick your operator, identify what the costs are. Is there going to be an affordability option? Is it not? What are the benefits to the community? What are the long-term risks to the operators and the private entity? What are the long-term risks to the city? And then you get to come back and provide all those questions and answers to the community, and know that you've got that you've done your due diligence, and you've got a complete roadmap for this project long-term. So P3, in its most basic essence, when a public entity, higher education has done this for a long time. If you want to research P3s, higher ed is going to be where you're going to see it most common. They've used it for student housing, they've used it for arenas, they've used it for convention centers and hotels. There's a lot of infrastructure projects out there as well. When it's where a public entity contracts with a private company to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain. So when you contract with that private developer, they basically take all the risk from the city, utilize their own funds, and then develop a method to deliver the project that best benefits that community. It creates financial flexibility. It brings in expertise that doesn't stress your staff, or you don't have to hire additional staff for inspection or to oversee the project. And then you enter into a long-term operating and maintenance agreement, and that's what the first page that I presented to you here is. And then the next one is just kind of a roadmap on how, it lays it out in a different format on how you can go about procuring P3s. This is a little bit longer roadmap than would need to take place in Jasper, because y'all already done a lot of the due diligence. You've got multiple feasibility studies. You've already received a bid from a contractor that can go out and design the project and build the project. What's to be determined, I think, is who's going to operate and manage it, and what's that operating and managing agreement look like. Benefits of the P3, typically, I think everybody would agree the private sector can typically build things faster and cheaper than government can. You typically see lower construction costs because of the bonding requirements. You can negotiate harder, you don't have to take low bids. And then another major advantage to, I think, Jasper, considering this is, Jasper is very fortunate that they have the funds to be able to allocate to go out and build this project without issuing debt or relying on grants to deliver the project. But also, you can evaluate how you can potentially partner with a private company to utilize some of their capital. And I think council's received a proposal where Kramer has offered up to pursue that and look at putting capital into the project. But there's different models that the council as a whole has to evaluate to say, hey, look, is that just another hand in the cookie jar, or is this going to be profitable and we just want to go out and build it, want to maintain it, or maybe we want to finance it and we just want to pay the debt service out of the reserve funds we have, so that if something does happen, we can do additional infrastructure projects that may be needed today. On a $15 million project, probably the debt service will be around $2 million, and you can finance that from 10 years all the way up to 30 years. You can structure it where the note's smaller up front or larger up front. It just creates financing options for Jasper to better utilize some of the resources you have. And you get the opportunity to evaluate, deliberate that, and make those decisions on what your community needs.
Financing option doesn't mean the city would have to go into the
Actually, in a P3, the developer issues the debt on behalf of the city. It's based on the city's credit rating, but the developer holds the debt and owns the infrastructure, and then the city leases it back, knowing that they're going to own that utility when the debt is settled 10, 20, 30 years down the road. But that's just one way. You don't have to do it that way. That's just one option that says, hey, instead of putting $15 million into this project today, there's risk associated with that. And that may be the path that the council chooses to go. But it may also say, hey, look, we want to finance half of it today so that we can do some other infrastructure projects we determined that we needed, and then we're gonna pay a lease payment on the other half. That debt's completely off the city's books. You see that off sheet or off books financing, so it's not debt issued by the city per se. But
You want to wait till the other council member gets back in?
sure.
You can say so, you're the mayor.
So the Jasper project, fiber to the home project, the needs been demonstrated. There's concerns on how it's going to be delivered in the long term. That's what I've heard. I've not heard any feedback at all that high speed, reliable fiber optics to the home would not be valuable for the community. But there is a lot of concern on what that looks like long term for the city of Jasper. So I think if the council wants to continue with the project, I would recommend that we address some of those concerns through evaluating a public-private partnership. And that's what this meeting is about today, to address any questions you may have, Mayor and Council, specifically about this project, what that would look like, and anything else that I can answer for you today. So it's a short presentation, but that's how I would recommend continuing this project.
So what you're saying is, there are other options that are out there, but right now, what we're looking at. Anything that you recommend in the way of that's your recommendation as far as a public-private initiative versus what we have now?
I think so. I think it's gonna, most importantly for the city of Jasper, I think it's gonna reduce the long-term risk and exposure to the city of having to operate and maintain, right? Once the city, and that was the original intent, the city was gonna design it, bid it, build it, operate and maintain. And once we started going through the process and getting a better understanding of the project, there was some talk and some consideration for, well, maybe we shouldn't operate and maintain it. Maybe we should partner with a third party to provide that. But right now, we don't know who that provider is going to be. So what I'm recommending is form a team and get all of those questions answered now before you commit to moving forward on the project. And you already have some of those pieces in place.
So what about the option of just another company coming in and doing it themselves without having the city of Jasper partner? I mean, and I understand that some of my colleagues up here are looking at it from a revenue standpoint. Am I correct? As far as revenue for the city. Maybe they see something that I don't, because I don't see that much revenue from a project such as this coming in from the city. And I'm trying to be as open-minded about this as I can, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's, if somebody wanted to come in and build it privately, there's things the city can do to incentivize that. You can you can streamline your permitting process, you can streamline your pole attachments for the poles that you own. But at the same time, in my experience is what you find is the major telcos, they won't go in and overbuild in areas, and that's probably why they're not here today. And nobody's showing up and knocking on the door and saying, hey, look, we'd like to get started to build this project, gigabit fiber to the home network. They're probably not coming. And that's where you see a lot, that's why you see in the infrastructure bill, there's $65 billion dedicated to rural broadband for local government entities across the nation, because the major telcos are not moving forward going in and overbuilding. A lot of them that I've talked to, the AT&Ts, the Verizons that were in this space 10 years ago, they're putting most of their resources and capital into wireless technology. So everybody's carrying around a phone in their pockets. That still doesn't address the needs and meet everybody's needs of what operate in your home.
Denise, can I ask you a question? With all this being said, are there grants out there, to provide to the cities to do that? I know they're up for the county. What about the cities? Do you know of anything available in that?
Not right, okay, there were some coming down.
No, there's nothing available right now.
Newton County got 2 grants. Sabine County got 2 grants.
Just this last legislative session, the state of Texas was a little bit behind the curve in creating the broadband office. Just this last legislative session, so they're out doing.
They could apply for a grant.
There's 234 applicants.
Just like China.
Second county got, said 234 entities applied for a grant, one got it.
And there was just a listening tour that went through Beaumont last week out of that office. And so they're out trying to get their hands around it and get prepared for when that money comes. But it's usually a long process. The federal government releases it to the state. The state then has to create a program to distribute it to the counties and the cities based on the requirements of the federal government.
So currently, right now,
And
You have-
per that grant, when they go in Sabine County and lay that fiber, they're not going to be hooking up to someone's house that has a copper line to their roof. So they're going to run however many miles of fiber, and they're going to skip over Joe, who lives off the highway, who has a copper cable in his house, and he gets 20 megabytes a second. But his neighbor, who doesn't have copper cable to it right now, we're getting fiber optic when they get down. So they're, Sabine County got the grant money. That's been a big hot topic. People have asked questions about it. But I mean, realistically looking at saying, will Jasper be able to get a grant? It's rolling dice.
Not if you pursue it.
Yeah, in the city of Jasper.
If they pursue it,
City of Jasper, County of Jasper,
County of Jasper will be.
this region though, getting a grant, it's pretty.
Sabine, Newton, got them both.
They'll be competitive, and no doubt, if you're leading the project. you
Here's your
ensure
salesman
that
for the whole deal right there.
that
That guy's the salesman.
Go ahead.
Is there city
We have
service?
a little bit of light on what we're saying here. Yes, the infrastructure bill has a lot of money in it, and I think we can expect to see broadband building down. It usually takes about 4 years for those things to happen, so I just want to give you a timeframe.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Who is she?
But Councilman Daniel's point, when you're driving the bus, you get to dictate the terms of the service. And you have a tremendous opportunity to demonstrate a need. I think it's just getting the questions answered to the public, with a comprehensive plan that allows the city of Jasper to know exactly the arrangement that they're going to enter into, to be able to make sure that this is sustainable, it's not going to be long-term liability for the city, on your golf course. So the city I managed before, we had a golf course, and we spent $700,000 a year out of the general fund into the golf course, because it was a recreation opportunity, but that was the decision the mayor and council wanted to make. But that's not what I'm hearing about, broadband project. Mayor and council will make sure that this is going to be sustainable long-term.
Are you aware of, because I'm not sure, and I know, that is within their feasibility study, are you aware that there was a questionnaire sent out for the businesses and the residents of the city in reference to the fiber broadband?
No, our feasibility was based around the cost of construction effort, that's every house, every house it is, every house it work. But, I mean, looking at the need for the infrastructure, they're not upgrading. Talk about the funding opportunities, the recent money that came out, there are specific service requirements, gas already meets, like the service requirements. And so, I mean, municipalities across the board typically are not going to qualify for the federal funding to this level. Unless the state gets it, and Texas decides that they are going to fund some of these municipal projects and come up with the process, that they're starting to talk about that process. But no, we didn't do a questionnaire on when we were asked. We were studying the cost of the construction methodology and pricing what the business.
And you feel as though it would have been for you to be able to, for you to do that, as far as with your study, just to, get a feel as far as how the residents and I know you may have talked to some of the business people, but I mean, I think it would have been prudent for you to be able for you to go out and, send out a study or a questionnaire to ask the people,
In design, I mean, there's enough studies out there that show you that there's a need for fiber wired broadband in most communities. So when you look at, like the 2 studies that were done here, they looked at what's available here, the infrastructure here, the speeds. We pulled all the costs people were currently paying. We did a study on, what's the highest available, how much does that cost, what's the tier
I think
package,
it's missing with macadamias.
and put all that together. But as far as asking people what they need, this was, I mean, people didn't think they needed electric back a long time either, so they thought that, but I think there's a difference between what this is an investment in infrastructure. It's the way we look at it, not really like a want, but it's just incredibly really better service.
we've come a long way. We've come a long way from the light bulb.
Part
Oh, yeah.
of one of the studies that we pulled, it showed what was it, 32 or 34% efficiency here. I mean, we're talking about, imagine if city of Jasper, 34%, I'll just round it down, say 30% of the city do they have roads. It's just dirt. Can you imagine the outcry from the public to get paved streets? I mean, we're kind of moving in that direction in technology. Fiber is a necessity. And right now, copper cable just, it's not going to cut it in the next 5-7 years. I mean, the data I work with right now, I can't even operate at Jasper. I drive to Houston. And I deliver a hard drive to customers. Because I can't operate in Jasper.
Yes, sir. Just looking at the numbers from the studies that were presented and the revenue range projected, Jasper has 30% poverty rate, and also 15% of our households are 65 and older living alone. So we do have people, I'm in 100% favor of having much better internet speeds available to all people. But have you thought at all about the underserved people who were talking about needing this for various reasons, how they would be able to pay for it, even the lowest package?
There was money that came out a few months ago that just went this month.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
There was some funds that came out a few months ago that the state had sent out, some EBB funds. They gave a small $50 to $80 subsidy for 4 months, I believe, is what the total time was. And they had also allocated up to $100 for some type of tablet device. That has ceased to exist. It's my understanding, and I do not have any specific law I can give it to you, that they're discussing subsidizing some of the entities that have internet in some of these areas that qualify, just like reduced lunch, just like SNAP, some of that. And they're wanting to meet the criteria of whatever the state would consider broadband, I guess for school usability, mainly for kids and stuff. And they're talking about 80-20. So the city would have to reduce their charge by 20% to get paid the 80 by the entity that would come in, just like an EBB thing was. That's why it was 50, 80, and 100 on some of those accounts. It has not got off the ground yet. They do not have any bills that's going to promote. That's the direction I understand they're going to try to go. They're going to try to find people that already had something in place.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I do believe there's an FCC program for that,
Okay.
about $50 a month.
Yeah, it's going to be 50. Right now it's $40, $39.99, and then this November it's going to be a $50 subsidy. So I know there's people, few from the public that discuss about low income and trying to pay electric bills and things like that. Part of this package, you will be able to get a federal subsidy on it. It's going to be about a $50 reduction on your bill. So if you get a lower tier package, and I'm just going to throw a number out here, say it's $70 a month, they're coming in and pay $50, you pay $20 a month, and you're having to get a gig down service.
I've seen other communities where they offer, to address the affordability issues in their communities, they offer a lower tier package. It could be a full gig, no caps, but it does give you the reliability that you need at a reduced price, so that you can provide minimum basis of reliable internet to the home.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to stream Netflix for 20 hours a week, but could you do schooling online? Yes. Could you do work online? Yes. Could you do workforce training online? All of those kind of things. There would be more restrictions placed on a lower tier package, but there's definitely communities that have looked at that and addressed it. And there's a lot of communities in South Texas specifically. That was their reason they were getting into this business as a city utility, was to address one need because it wasn't available, but also to ensure it was going to be affordable to the community.
One of my things is, when I was talking to Brandon, when I was questioning Brandon about this, that brings back to the question what the young lady was just saying, with the numbers that you were giving, with the lower income households and the senior citizen household, would be the importance of a questionnaire is like, how many of those people actually would need this service or would actually use this service? And how many of those, I know those households may be in the minority because, like I said, we do want to have reliable broadband service for our students in case of incidents like with COVID that happen again, but we want to make sure that, that it's going to be utilized.
People that need it, the internet now is a basic human right in the United States.
I know people
It's not true yet.
They have a computer in the house.
Mr. Land, honestly, what part of our scope is studying who we're hearing is like, how much we talk. So, when we were approached, we looked at the cost, as well as the price. And we did run some models with lower tier groups and show the ROI that along the way was. So we just wasn't part of our scope.
And I think that would have been an important part of your scope.
The city, you guys are taking so much time and effort to review the information that's provided to you. I just feel like it's critical that you have the right numbers in front of you. But,
I agree.
census data is census data, and we use it every day in our jobs, and I just want to be sure that the information that's provided to the council on the projected number of households that could possibly be connected and so forth, because that's where you talk about your revenue streams
Absolutely.
and your trade-off. So, I just want to be absolutely sure that y'all are getting the right numbers to make an informed decision, because I think that's critical to the success of the city council in making these decisions.
Mr. Daniels, you told me on Monday, a week ago, that the city never had any intentions of going into broadband business.
What day was this?
The day after, well, it was the day of the last city council meeting, Laura was a witness, that y'all were going to, in turn, you didn't care if you had any consumers out there, that you were going to in turn sell it to 4 providers for $50 million.
That's a false statement, but thank you for your comment.
It's not. You said it in front of Laura and me. And she said, Debbie, listen to this. It's what you said.
I've heard a lot of comments from Ms. Foster over the past few
That
months.
is true.
And I have to say that a lot of it's a little bit
I don't
out of
lie.
context.
That is what you said. And Laura is my witness. She told me to listen. $50 million you were going to sell it. You had 4 providers, and I wanted to know where the dotted line was. Who was going to be the 4 providers?
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Foster.
Question, Ms. Golden, is that true or false?
We did have a conversation after the meeting. I do not recall that number. We talked about a lot of different issues. I encourage Mr. Daniels to have a conversation with you. I also encouraged him to have a conversation with other people. I do not recall those numbers, Debbie. I do not recall that
Following
that
day
number.
after that said meeting, did you call KJS and say you plan to sell the system for $50 million?
That's incorrect. I did talk to Mike Lapton. There's some wonderful things that Mr. Lapp said that was very encouraging about your point of view.
Did you say to Mr. Louth that the city would sell the system for $50 million?
No.
So like that's comment earlier though,
I'm
about
done.
the,
I'm done. I can take
about the
it.
affordability option, I think that is important for Jasper. I think entering into a public-private partnership, the mayor and the council gives it dictate that. If that's a priority of the mayor and council, then you dictate to that private provider, the partner with the city, that they have to provide an affordable option to people that meet certain requirements in the city. And if those options don't become available, where there's rebates or subsidies available to the city of Jasper, that they have a plan to deliver to that. I think those are the kind of things that you get to outline in an agreement that they have to meet. If they can't meet those requirements, then you go on to the next provider to say, can you?
I had a chance yesterday briefly to visit with Anderson. That's what we were talking about. He was concerned about some of the same things I was. But I told him, if we've got a list of these people that we know may have issues, especially if the government's going to possibly subsidize these, is that if this is built out, when we get to those locations or houses, we can go ahead and bring fiber in with the permission of the property owner or the resident there. And should it come to pass, all we have to do is turn it on and get it to be lit because the hardware would already be in place. And that may be an option we could look at to make sure that we fully utilize to those lower income people. Just go ahead and have the hardware there in case some of the facility had to shut down. If they did ask somebody to subsidize it, already be in that location. But you have to have consent from whoever lives there, the property owner.
But there would be a cost for that, hopefully, like you're saying, hopefully there would be some type of subsidy that would be there, but if it wasn't, it wouldn't be.
Yeah, when we talked about yesterday, we just said maybe just install it at those locations that we knew that the school could provide or some of the other entities could. And there would be a charge unless it was actually activated or lit. We even talked about the school and some of the kids there for the school, and maybe the city could help them out for 2 weeks while they were out of school or something and not provide that as a charge if there weren't some funds.
I think there's options available. I mean, I think that's what the council, the mayor is here to discuss, that, right, there's options available. We'd like to know what those options are.
Right, we need to exhaust all those options.
We need to determine what the priorities are for this utility to benefit the taxpayers and residents of Jasper. Create that plan and go to market and say, hey, look, here is what we're looking for as a city of Jasper. We've got revenue or that we're looking, that we have available to put towards the project. We're interested in what partnerships are out there. Is there any people that are willing to bring capital dollars to put to work? We have affordability concerns. We have, here's what we want. How are you going to meet it? And then that's each part of it.
I understand that. City manager, I don't want to put you on the spot. No? You don't want me to?
No.
Because you know what I'm going to ask.
No, I
No, I just want to know your opinion. That's all.
I'm not saying, I mean, I agree with everybody else that I feel like we need broadband.
Absolutely, I agree with that too. But
I mean, I think the options that, that they can come into the table are worth considering. That is you as council's decision. Direction of where
One question no one asked is what harm is this fiber optic network going to do to the city?
We don't,
What harm will this do to the city?
Well, when you say harm, what comes to mind to me is government financial. Maybe all that kind of harm, because obviously we're not going to suffer any other kind of way. So I don't think that any harm is going to come to anybody, but I'm not sure that I understand based on the numbers. How long is it going to take for the city to pay this off and start making money? Based on the number of households we have here. And that's what I keep coming back to and looking at, because that's how we operate in our business. So, all of this other stuff is kind of boring.
I may not be around to see that, so you know.
Well, I mean, I think that
I'm just
when
saying.
you're looking at doing a project, that's one of the most legitimate things you want to look at. You should try.
Your turn on it, yeah, all right, when, how long it's going to
Yes, sir.
And that was part of our feasibility study we ran, and there was different numbers you guys ran.
Yeah, anywhere from 2.8 to 9, depending on the construction methodology and pricing points.
2.8 to 9, what?
2 years, 2.8 to 9 years.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Is that on a county or a city?
That was just on the city. That I consider 6,200 total addressable market. But you have to have, I mean, it really depends on the pricing and,
How far outside of the city did you go to get
That's
that
it.
uh, just the ETJ and ETJTs.
TJ's is 2 miles.
Yeah, so about 2 miles, and we skirted down some county roads.
Well, that was the thing, 2.99 years. So I mean, let's just say 9 years on that. What was the total? 15.4, 15.8, 15.8.
And that's a projection, right? That's an estimate
Yeah,
of what
that's
it might be.
That all depends on the pricing.
Ms. Evelyn?
In the city.
Ms. Evelyn?
Yeah,
Ms. Evelyn, did you have something?
they went 2 miles outside the city into ETJ for using
To
the,
get 6,200.
to using the census data that they were provided in some of the blocks. It's about a 2 mile outside of the city limits, I believe. I think it was a little further out when you went out 2799 to where the end of the power was. Some of the areas already have city water, sewer, Ryle Acres, sewer comes from Homewood. I think it was a couple of their houses. I don't remember exact details on some of it. It was outside the city.
Ms. Evelyn?
A little over a year ago, sometime in 2021, when broadband was first brought up, and did you, Mr. Daniel, say that you didn't think that it was a good thing for Jasper at a city council meeting? In fact, you
What was-
refrained from voting on it. Didn't you say later that you refrained from voting because you thought it wasn't good for Jasper at the time?
What was not good for Jasper? I'm a little confused. What were you referring to?
Broadband,
Okay, the fiber project.
yes.
I can go back and look, but I don't recall that.
it was on your Facebook page.
In July of 2021, it says, I abstained from voting
I don't
on the
know.
budget.
I can go back and look, but I don't recall that.
You don't recall a lot?
He said I can abstain from voting on the budget for the city today. One of the
Oh.
line items.
I understand what you're referring to. I'm actually glad you mentioned that. That's
Yeah.
a very good question. So, does everybody understand what Miss Evelyn O'Neill is referring to? Do you truly understand? Because I'm about to.
Well, here we go. Teach us.
Holy shit.
Drop it. I
So,
said-
here's the thing. So there was a project. It was $986,000 to run 1 mile of fiber optic cable. It was approved by a previous council, and when I came in, I didn't agree with that because there was $986,000 for 1 mile of fiber optic cable ran inside the city limits. Now think about that. $1 million to run 1 mile of fiber.
That was on the, I don't recall that. That was on. That's something we did.
Do you have proof of that?
Well, we could go back and look.
Yeah,
At the time, I was.
That'd be good.
We need
And
to
it was
look
about
at
a mile, and it was I believe it was $907,000. And at the time, I came out of the council, I didn't agree with it, so I abstained, I didn't want to vote, because I didn't agree with
I
that
don't
kind
recall
of
that ever being on the
I'm not quite sure, this was a year ago, I've slept a few
And
times
you
since then.
also said that,
recall
that you didn't want to waste tax dollars, but you should seek out the state and federal funds that will be available in short order.
Yeah, at the time, I was doing research on that, and there's, like I said, I made that comment, you're correct, on Facebook, but it was not pertaining to this project.
Well, you did say that about the federal funds that were going to be available in short order.
Yes, and if you heard my last statement, I was doing research at that time and calling around, calling people in the state, calling people over in Washington DC that I knew.
So it's
trying
You
not
to
don't
get
print statements like
information
that until you get the
on
research done.
funds for the city to expand the fiber optic network, because we currently don't have one here in the city.
Governor Norsworthy, you had something to say?
Yes, sir. I don't see any harm that it would cause Mr. Daniels. The way it was presented, it looks suspicious.
What was presented?
The way the broadband project was presented, when the citizen came here to ask questions, 4 of you guys did a no-show.
What do
We
you?
came to ask
We had
questions.
already voted on it in a previous meeting.
Excuse me,
The
Mr.
project is
No,
already.
go, Mr. Norsworthy, go ahead. I'm listening.
Excuse me. My question was addressed to Mr. Daniels. When we had questions, the citizens had questions.
Okay.
In regard, I'm not against the broadband.
Okay.
It's just questions need to be answered. That's all that we're saying.
Okay, well, this is the 14th meeting on this. So we've had 14 meetings on this, and all meetings have been available for public comment.
And
How many more meetings do we need to have?
Not
We also
question and
have a
answer.
website to address those questions if you have, if someone doesn't want to ask them in a meeting, you can go to the website and ask them on there, and they'll
Oh,
get back to you.
Now we need to vote on it, to see what the citizens think about it, taxpayers, I think. I don't
Nathan?
think that this time.
I believe this is the 14th or 15th.
I don't think that 5 people can decide on spending that much money when it belongs to thousands of people.
That's what you pay us the big money for, Ms. Elton.
But these people were elected in good faith by the citizens of Jasper to make decisions. I think they're making good decisions. And I just don't know how much longer we have to deal with negativity in the community when we have an opportunity to move forward. I've been here my whole life. We have these little nitpicking discussions and nothing happened. Here is an opportunity. So why don't we take it, for goodness sakes? And thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
Elton.
and that's, I'm glad you pointed that out. Look, guys, I got on council last year. I wanted to run, I'm young. I wanted to do good for the community. I came back to this, I don't even work in this community. I don't even own a business in this community. I do all my work out of Houston and Beaumont, but I live here so I can bring the resources that I do make back to the community, provide a service, I volunteer, I pick up trash off the highway. I donate money to organizations. I do a lot of good things here in the community, When I left here, when I was 18 years old, I went to the Marine Corps. I fought overseas. I came back. I was embraced.
What are we doing?
Recovered. I left again working in oil field. But you know what? I always came back home.
We have good quality of life.
There's a good quality of life here.
Thank you for your service.
And so, thank you. And so, you know, over the past year, I've been demonized, I've been slandered, lies. There's been all sorts of stuff. I mean, I hear stuff on the street. I've seen some presentations passed around town. People print documents out and say, hey, this is what so-and-so is saying behind the scenes. And it's almost hurtful because
Oh, here we go.
I love this community and I want to do good for it. Yet there's so many people that are just trash talking behind the scenes. And I don't want to single anybody out here.
Not on the payrolls
But you know,
offered twice
even in the past election, there was someone that
to
did
come on the
windows.
show.
And on their Facebook page, it says they wanted to fix the internet. And they're sitting in this room now. Yet some things I've been hearing around town about them, what they've been saying, is they're going back on what their campaign was. And it's like, okay, well, now that someone else is doing it, you don't like that idea. I mean, there's just a bunch of little bitty, childish activities that have been going on in the past year. And there's been personal vendettas against people up here in council, in the media, in the general public. And it's getting old. It's getting really old.
I don't think it has anything to do with you. I think it has to do with that amount of money.
I'm talking about it in general. Since I came to the council, I've been here a long time. I serve my community. And some of the things I've seen over the past year is really embarrassing.
Well, let's stop talking about that and move forward.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm ready to move forward. This is our 14th meeting on this.
It's not a question.
Yes, go ahead,
Yes,
Nathan.
sir. I have a question back toward this, this public-private partnership concept. So if the city were to explore that route, then I would assume that the private entity that would be involved would do more research on the number of people, the feasibility of the number of connections that we really do have in this area, and how far out we need to go to get enough revenue to, is that correct? I mean, do they basically start over with new numbers if you're to go this route? Or where do we go from here with the
So-
peak rate process?
So, to answer your question, I think there's a lot of outline questions that need to be answered. But we have some concerns about, right? That we've heard multiple times that it's not whether or not broadband would be beneficial to the community. It's what it's going to look like long term for the city of Jasper. It's $15 billion the right way to allocate funds for the project. So I think whenever you partner with a private entity, you share in those costs and those burdens and those risks, and you have an agreement in place before you go to construction, before you go to sell the product, that specifically outlines what is going to be charged. Is there an affordability option? Exactly what are the parameters of the project, and where is it going? Is it 6,800 or is it 2,300? Or in the future, there's going to be opportunities to partner with Jasper County. So, is that included, evaluated? Private entities are going to make sure that all of those questions are answered, just like the public entity wants to make sure that they've got all those before you get married into the 20 or 25-year relationship. So I think there will be additional due diligence that will be required. There will be additional questions that have to be addressed. And I think there's different options that have to be evaluated. And at this time, it may be that, it may end up being a better option to string open the whole versus bury it, but there's there's risks that are associated with that too. We all know the hurricane's coming, right? And you're not gonna have internet. Everybody depends on the internet to get their information and what's going on with the weather.
If the hurricane comes and we lose power, you're not gonna have any internet anyway, so. But
Well,
I understand,
that's-
it'd be better if it's underground.
That's-
Question would be, would that internet service you're talking about be underground all the way from the provider to Jasper?
Yes.
Well, it would be in Jasper. Is it be in Jasper?
Where it's going
Yeah, wherever you take your service. Yeah. I mean, you're always at the risk of wherever you take internet connection.
So whether it's underground or above ground, here, what would that?
Well, you would have a redundant system. You would typically design these that you have two different connections coming in, so that if one goes down, the other one picks it up and can serve the entire community. And it's unlikely, further be able to speak more specifically to the details of that. It's unlikely that both services go down, typically taking from one from Houston and another pipe coming in from Dallas. So different routes. So you build the system to be redundant.
Yes, that's a good question. What you're saying, the options that are available, some of them are interesting. So now, so like Kramer said, okay, yeah, we have other options with the partnership. And they said, okay, look, we want to revisit this one, we'd like to present this to. Would other companies be able to come in and present the same option that they're doing? I mean, when you have to revisit that, I mean, since they have the option to do it, you have to give someone else the option. Or would you, as our consultant, recommend to our city manager, to us, the board, saying, okay, look, I have 2-3 other companies that have this, and I'd like to, they have an opportunity to present those options to the city, to council?
Yes.
Yes, sir, short answer is yes.
Yeah, that's what I want, the short answer. I don't need
Procurement
the
process.
extended answer.
Yes, the answer is you have to.
Okay.
From the state guidelines.
Right.
As written, you have to send out a new
Just check.
RFP
Mhm.
and entertain proposals and so forth.
Okay.
So
Thank
I have a question. So, other communities have built fiber optic broadband, correct?
That's correct.
And have any of those others built it and then sold it? After they built it, maybe it wasn't profitable, or they felt like that they could make a profit off of it?
Not that I'm aware of. There's one city that I'm aware of that's currently going through that process now. But the city of Dayton has gone through the evaluation process now. They were hit by COVID just like so many people were.
Yeah, I called them.
Yeah, it was probably the worst timing. The project was supposed to be $5 million, but by the time they went to construction, price increases and escalation ended up pushing to $9 million, so it doubled their per connection cost. Made that return on investment a lot longer. But that's another reason why a public-private partnership is beneficial, is because you have private entities that shares in that risk with the city.
Even with the economic climate the way it is today, I think that would still be a good recommendation.
For the city of Dayton.
No, not for the city of Dayton. No, I'm saying for the city of Jasper. I mean, given the economic climate today, I mean, you think that would still be a good recommendation for the city of Jasper to do?
Without a doubt, I think partnering with a private company to operate and maintain this network additionally.
And who would that be?
Well, I think that's to be determined. I mean, I think that's part of the mayor and council's due diligence. We have to evaluate who that could be. I mean, you already have one company who's interested, who's put considerable time, effort, energy, and resources into the project. They've indicated a willingness, but there also may be other internet service providers out there that would entertain coming in.
But I gotta agree with one thing. I mean, what Ms. Goldfield said, we need to stop playing around. Say something. We need to stop playing around with this. Whatever we're gonna do is whatever we're gonna do. I mean, I like your recommendations. I like what you're saying. Yes, there is a need for this in the city of Jasper. I mean, but yeah, definitely not up. And everybody knows that I'm opposed to spending $16 million on this project. But if we can get a partnership, whether it's with Kramer or ABC company down the road, or NBC company down the road, or CBS company down the road, we need to get something and get it going and get it established and just get it done and over. But right now, and I'm just going to tell you right now, my colleagues know up here, I'm not spending $16 million on this at all. Yes, it's needed, but it's not going to happen. I mean, at least I'm not. You guys may want to do it, that's fine, but I'm not.
I have one other question. So the revenue, is that just from the homes that are going to participate? So we're going to build an ultra-fast information highway. And it's going to go to every single house in Jasper. And then they decide, in business, and they decide if they want to hook up or not, okay? The opportunity's there for them, if they can participate.
We're going to build a line. We're going to build a line, and they have the opportunity to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So
Right, that's what I'm saying.
here's my
They have the
question.
opportunity.
What's the other way to generate revenue through this project without just relying on people signing up?
So the major telecommunications company, if they want to put a new cell tower in your community, you can generate lease agreements with them to charge them for backhaul and power, because even though your phone runs off a wireless connection, it comes from a wired connection at some point. An example of that, in the city of Mont Belvieu, we built a new water tower. We designed it to accommodate telecommunications equipment with a chase and an apparatus connected to on top. It's a, I believe, a 500,000 gallon storage tank, and it cost the city $1.3 million to build, and we signed a 20-year agreement with Verizon for $1.1 million to attach onto that infrastructure.
There's also,
What's
you
the
can,
population of Mount Belvieu?
Population of Mount Belvieu, when we started the project, was 6,000. It's currently just shy of 9,000. But yeah, there is outside revenue streams, especially for leasing, backhaul, and fiber in your right of way. Other telecommunications providers, prayers, any other options without this.
There, I mean, you can open source the network and allow other providers that work in bigger communities.
I don't think, I'm sorry, I don't think everybody can hear you,
Oh,
so.
sorry. You can run an open source network where you can get two or three different ISPs competing on your network and providing the same service, the same fiber, just to different customers. Currently, I think Charter was trying to talk to you about getting through channel goals. You know, to do that, design this we allow additional common space. And so you can lease pathways to providers like Five Live, AT&T, via Charter to run the fiber through your town. Services, you can charge them. And they still allow franchise agreements on the, so the franchise agreements with your fiber as well. There's a lot of opportunity. Everybody thinks it's just for internet, it's not. It's another file. It's like a pipeline for data.
There would be some likely reduced costs to the city on your existing infrastructure, maybe connected through cellular on your lift stations and or your automated
all your automation
systems.
in your city can be tied into the network. Or your, thanks for your question, because I didn't think about saying that, but yeah, I mean, you can lease this out as a pipeline to other companies. They can utilize it, provide services here. They can also use it as an information highway. One of the big things going on right now in the U.S. is actually they're going out and buying old oil and gas pipelines and running the fiber optic cable through the pipeline, and because it's, in a nutshell, it's a pipeline, and so you can lease it out and generate revenue off of it that way. Go ahead.
Yes, how many broadband projects has Kramer done?
Currently, right now, we do about 10,000 homes designed for AT&T. We have a nationwide contract with Time Life Consulting Group to do the design while they manage the AT&T project. That's all over North Texas, but we passed about 10,000 homes a month there.
10,000?
Yes, for AT&T design. We also do a bunch of their civil design. We're currently doing a project in West Des Moines, Iowa. There's about 20,000 homes we're working with there. We just finished a Google and Microsoft project in West Des Moines as well.
Is that how many city projects you're currently working with, Brandon?
That's our operations construction guys. My assignment, that's AT&T here. We're also doing feasibility studies for a large line home study, a lot of the smaller communities that missed the funding. We just finished up like Altus, Lawton, Tom Wall, Muskogee, and that's basically this data collection for how many points were there and how many people were served.
When did the city get into references?
How long have you been with the company?
With Kramer, I started in August, right after that. Before that, I was with years, which is a very large company owned by Quantum. Prior to that, I was with Iowa Data Common Electrical as director of engineering in New York, and then Lakeport, which is another large international provider.
Yes, sir. You have something to say, sir? Okay. Bob, you've been awfully quiet back there. You listening?
I've got an opinion, but where you headed looks like the right direction. I'm in favor of the internet, of the broadband service, but I also, as a businessman, I've looked through warehouses out here, and I had an income source before I spent the first nickel. I knew where we were gonna end up with. You answer those questions, and you'll get my support. But until those questions are answered, I'm in the air on this thing. I'm for and against it.
You're in my district, so I'm with you.
So I just want to ask this one more time, as far as the income source, the leasing. So what we say is we believe in our community. We want to invest in our community. We want to use our money in our community for our citizens and give our citizens the opportunity to have the fastest internet available.
East Texas.
Correct. Yes. And so once we build that, then we immediately have, will these, is there any way to sign up any people before where they will commit to leasing? When you're talking about fiber light and AT&T, or do they approach you after you've built it?
You can start the conversation. I think the right provider who has contacts with AT&T, start exploring those now. Likely they will come later unless you just we're at the right place at the right time. Is my experience. When we rolled ours out and started pursuing that, that was in our second year of development. It was our primary source of revenue in the project that I built. But we started having that conversation. Said, hey, we're here. We're willing to work with you. We'll be a lot more flexible than the current providers. And those conversations were starting. The water tower project was prior to the fiber broadband project, but that's an example of how you can generate revenue off of it outside of your businesses, residential business connection.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the percentage of your population that was using broadband, city's broadband? Did you have holdovers that had other, or they all, how did that work?
Yeah, so very proud of that project, and it was very successful. I think it laid the groundwork for all communities in the state of Texas. I don't think all of them will be as successful as Mount Bellevue, but we had 80% of our residents connected to that service within 2 years.
And I asked you this question before, and I'm gonna ask you again, if you didn't get it right. What was your property rate then?
Yeah, it was very low, but I say that with a caveat that not every project has to look like the one in Mount Bellevue.
I understand, but I'm just trying
Yeah, it
to
was-
get it understood, ask all different kind of questions. so
Yeah.
we can-
No, it was completely different demographics.
Right, because in my mind, I think of that being more like the city of Lumberton than your minds, but I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just asking.
But there's examples, I think, in South Texas, the city of Florida, for example, has probably a much higher poverty level than a lot of communities in Southeast Texas.
And y'all see it working.
And it's working. Yeah. But it's a different outcome. If you know, and that's part of your due diligence and process is, you know, at the end of the day, and I think that's where Councilman Daniel was going with this question with onerous costs. If the city invested the money and recouped their money over 10, 15, 20 years, but they didn't have a long-term outlay that they had to budget in general fund for, well, then they delivered a service to the community that was needed without creating additional risk along it. I think there's options to look at that as well. I mean, I think they have to do that.
Yeah, and the lifespan of fiber is pushing like 50 years. So I mean, this is a 50-year infrastructure
Another thing
project.
is in Mount Bellevue, underneath the city, like 10,000 miles of gas lines. So you had a problem getting, you
Yeah. We definitely have
had to go to
constructability.
court to get.
Yeah, we definitely have constructability issues.
Yeah. So it
and every project's gonna be. And as I talk to different communities across the state, and they're looking at evaluating, as I said, hey, look, there's a lot of different examples out there. There's not an open source project yet in Texas, but there is other open sources to reference. In small communities, open sources probably would work, right? Just run the England ball or like even provide the service. So I think the approach that the council's considering, where you partner with one provider, make that you can ensure you're sitting in the driver's seat, you can ensure that every home is passed, every business is passed. Because not every time the private businesses aren't going to do it. They're going to go where they can get the highest penetration rate.
Okay, so is there any chance that one of the providers that we all use right now will be able to offer something better than what the city can be able to offer? Will the city be so advanced?
Once we put fiber in, that's the latest tech.
Yeah.
But they want to build a compete.
So you have the tax me out, because I'm so old, I'm getting another way to say that. You have
the Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, Sparklight's offering. I don't know what my internet bill is because I pay for multiple sources.
$66.
I'll just say $66. Sparklight offers it. It runs on a copper cable. We can come in, run fiber, it'll be 10 times the speed, easily, hands down. Same price. I'm just making, like I said, I'm just making a number.
We come in.
So your infrastructure
You heard
also
that?
has a lifespan of 50 years, which is a good long time. So I think that's important for everybody to hear.
Yeah, I mean, fiber optic came out, what, 1950? Anybody know? It was the 1950s. I mean, and some of the original copper, they're 80 years into it, still working. So, 50 years is a safe bet. But, they're estimating up to 100 years right now through research facilities.
Fiber's full.
Especially underground.
Fiber's full scale. So once the fiber is in the ground, what that means is that we can offer a gig today, and 5 years from now, we can offer
The world record on fiber optics for data transfer is like 624 terabytes.
so you can increase the speed over time. This competition. So as Sparklight comes in, they lay fiber next to you, you increase the speed. And the example of that is in Mount Bellevue, prior to COVID, we had 6 gigabytes of total data average coming through our entire network pre-COVID. As soon as COVID hit, everybody went home to work and learn. It went to 12 gigs in 2 weeks. So it doubled in 2 weeks. Our agreement with our providers was we had 10 gig pipe coming in the community. It was burstable so that we could accommodate the additional speeds without the throttle. So then what we went back was we negotiated more data available to the city. And you scale it, you can move it up.
So there are costs associated, those costs
There is
associated with
costs
that.
associated with that.
So Anderson, when Mr. Lynn, we looked at this feasibility study prior to, we used the 10XGS Mon system, which is, you can technically run 10 gig to every person up in that.
And that's currently what's being rolled out.
Well, that's because if you price a 1 gig system today, that's obviously in 5 years. And so, being able to offer those capabilities. But once your glass fiber's in the ground, as those new electronics and new lasers are upgraded, they just shoot light at different frequencies down the tube. You already have the tube there. So if it's 100 gig in 10 years, you can put a new laser, a piece of equipment there, and it'll upgrade your system.
I have one more question. Explain how this will be that this will attract businesses to our community, having fiber optic broadband in our community. Will that be an incentive for people or businesses to locate here?
It's definitely something that's evaluated, especially in places that are outside of major metros. If they're looking at locating here, I would argue now that internet is no longer nice to have. It is a utility for a residence, and it's even more so for a business. I know most of the banks have 2 different connections coming in, so that if one goes down, they can continue to operate on the other. And that's Mr. Councilman Daniels' example of taking a hard drive. We had the same issue of oil and gas businesses in Mount Bellevue, people transporting data over hard drives, modern day Pony Express, put it in a car and drive it. It's critical for business. What we've seen most recently practice I'm part of. I resigned and choose to work from home and run my own business. There's more and more people doing that. COVID kind of pushed everybody into that space and created the technology to allow that to happen. And the people that are already working from home in your community are going to have additional capabilities and less constraints than they have today. It's going to, I think more so is going to benefit your existing businesses more so than the businesses that are coming in the future. But it will help. I mean, it will no longer be a question of can we go to Jasper where we're going to get our internet from. We know that we have gigabit or a fiber optic network that we can tap into.
Thanks for bringing it up. So most of, I do a lot of traveling. I work for a lot of different companies, work on a lot of different projects. And as we stated before, fiber, I mean, this is an information highway. A lot of companies, this is going to sound funny, but as everybody watched Star Wars or some type of science fiction, you got little robots running around doing tasks, cleaning up trash cans and throwing it away. So they're actually building warehouses now that are fully automated and there's no lights, it's pitch black. So you go in them, there's no employees, it's all robots. You turn on the switch, it turns the lights on in the warehouse and there's just robots, forklifts, everything's automated. Well, it runs off a network. And I had mentioned this to some of the council the other day. Another thing that's going on right now is dynamic manufacturing. So it's on-demand manufacturing based off the orders that are coming in. We get to have an information highway that can handle that amount of traffic to make the adjustments to the machinery to be able to support that type of business model. Well, and there's also a server farm. There's a whole list. I could go on and on for about 2 hours. But
To Councilman Golden's point about bringing the business, would you, in layman's terms, elaborate on symmetry with fiber optics as opposed to the fact that I may have a 100 megabyte download on Sparklight, but my upload is 20?
Yeah, and that's, you did a great team. It's, and that's where the existing businesses and existing home business users see the biggest difference, right? It's your upload speed. If you watch TV and use your Ring doorbell, your thermostat, you don't need a gigabit network coming to your home. But if you're sending data out, pushing large documents, data, design, engineers, architects, they can work from home. I know in Houston, there's very few companies, counting the major big four accounting firms, they're not back in office yet. You're pushing out large files, large quantity of data. That's where a symmetrical gigabit network really serves the community.
So what you got a question?
Oh, I was just gonna say, what would be the harm in doing a survey with the community and getting a response, and I guess a percentage of how many people wanted it, not, you know what I'm saying, just to let them feel like they're a part of it.
I believe KJS actually did a poll the other day. It was 60% for it and 40% for no.
We're talking about a survey, so I think the problem is.
Put it on your video.
I think the problem is, I think a lot of people don't feel like there's a lot of transparency. And to do a survey, it will allow people to feel like they have an opinion, because they are going to be a consumer. They are going to pay for the bill. So I feel like a survey would allow the people to feel like they're a part of it and not an outsider of what is being done. So what would it take, or what would it be, or the time frame would it be to do a survey to allow people to give their opinion and make an overall decision for the people, because they are their consumers. They are the ones who are going to spend the money.
Clarify about that case.
Put it inside the bill.
Put up a poll, and within about 4 hours, it was running about 80% against the broadband project, about 20% for. It then jumped magically to about 60-40, 64-40 against. We got a call from Watts, which is our provider, our internet, or our website. They said, we want you to know, it looks like the poll is compromised. So we have one of them. They explained that our poll, if you vote on it, you can only vote once. If you know what you're doing, you can go to your computer and refresh one of your, something to do with IP. And they said someone is refreshing, voting again, refreshing, voting again. did skew the numbers, so at that point, the polls.
They, we had a few, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I want to say that, you know, before you do a survey, you really need to have a bottom line. If people understand when the payback period is, when I signed the lease and built those warehouses, I knew how quick I was gonna get my money back. If you know the payback period and understand the finances, then you'll either get everybody on board or everybody will leave, one or the other.
Yep, there you go.
That's what it is.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. Thank you, Bob.
There were several things, Nathan, that transpired here. I was not elected, I was actually appointed to fill the fire department. And we got on it. One of the things that we started looking at was some projects that hadn't been completed. And one of them was a project on the east side of town. It was going to be a training field 21 years ago, I think it was. And we went back and addressed it, the council approved it. And there's going to be some schools out there, hopefully this next year. A lineman school, firefighter certification, potentially some stuff, another potential project that hasn't been approved or worked on yet. But there's a couple of things out there we're going to utilize that project. Those type of things, it was 21 years ago that got funded the first time, if I'm not mistaken on dates. We also had, we were trying to figure out, with help from the city, what we could do to maybe generate some potential growth. Broadband definitely was one of the things that we discussed, but we also looked at utility rates, and with the help of some of the people that are on the utility board and the city, we're still working on some of it, but there's been a reduction of almost 3 cents a kilowatt. So it's something that's also can come into play. The city had heard a lot of people talking about streets, and with the help of a consultant and some funds that came through, and some streets that got worked on, one of them seems to be complete, it looks like the end of this month. I think there's 24 streets that are getting major work done on in our city. From the time I got here to presumably whenever I stay till it's already been approved. One of the other things we looked at was ad valorem property taxes. The taxes that had a tendency to creep up, we had an opportunity to pay off some certificate of obligations. And those certificate of obligations dropped our tax rate from about 36 cents down to about 10. Hopefully at budget workshop, we can work on that. 25, I've dropped 10 cents off, I'm sorry, I misspoke. And then we had a potential budget workshop, we're looking at some maintenance and operations to see if we can work on that ad valorem tax rate. Hopefully get it back down to where it was 20 years ago, see if we can get some growth back in here. So maybe with the internet, maybe with a little lower utility rates, maybe with some lower ad valorem property taxes, maybe with a few streets that are fixed. It's little bites, but I think they also add up the meal if we can just keep everything together.
Electricity's at what, 0.087 cents? Something like that, 0.087.
Right.
Okay. I noticed this drop still.
So I want to follow
Mayor?
up, pardon me, yeah?
No, go ahead, because like we have another meeting, I think we have a meeting at 5:30 that the
I just
mayor
wanna follow
and
up.
city manager and I have to go to, so.
Excuse me.
we can get that.
I just want to follow up on the firefighting field about what an opportunity that's going to have for our citizens here with the students, and we're also attracting other schools to come in and participate in that. When they graduate from that, they'll have some kind of certification. But also cybersecurity is a huge field. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Michael?
Yeah,
When we're
I'm
talking
actually-
about LIT.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'll go ahead and finish.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've actually reached out to a lot of education institutions, everywhere from California over to New York. Right now, I was actually in a teleconference the other day. I won't tell you the whole story, but in short, a lot of these institutions are partnering up either with local colleges or the colleges themselves or those educational institutions. And they're partnering up with municipalities, counties, states. One of the teleconference I was in last week, it was out of Indiana. Last year, there was over 500,000 cybersecurity jobs, really cybersecurity analysts, if you want to just kind of nail it down. But there was upwards of I think total 900,000 as a broad cybersecurity. Well, a lot of those jobs, well, let me take a step back. A lot of those institutions will actually come in and provide training for free for rural communities once they partner up with the state, county, or local government, at no cost until they land a job. Now, majority of those jobs are going to range from about $45,000 to $90,000 a year. So all you have to do is go in, you can take a high school kid and say, okay, hey, you know, we're going to sit you down. He takes a little entry exam. Basically, it just says, hey, we think you can go through the program. So they do somewhat have some type of filter for cybersecurity. Other jobs, not so much, but there's a lot of IT jobs out there that are not filled in. And there's such a shortage, all these institutions are coming in now, so we're going to train these people for free. They're in rural America, they can work remotely out of their house, and they can get a high-paying job benefits. And so the teleconference I was in last week was pretty interesting. There's a bunch of different ones. Last week, there was 12 total people in it, and they were going through the course, and all of them came from a small rural community, just like Jasper, not a lot of economic opportunity. And I just kind of asked them, I said, hey, if this program wasn't around, where, you know, what is your outlook where you're currently at? And they said, there is no outlook. We'd have to leave and go to the city. I said, okay, so this program here is going to give you an opportunity to get a skill set, and they help you with a career service, and hook you up with a cybersecurity company like HyperX, or you can go work for AT&T, Verizon, or whoever. Because cybersecurity is in every single business now. It doesn't matter if it's a oil and gas company, it doesn't matter if it's convenience stores. There's a cybersecurity guy behind the scenes somewhere, and he may be at his house working, making $65,000 a year, full benefit package, retirement. I don't think pensions are still around, but you know, that's another potential. And so one of the requirements, funny thing, is I asked this on one of the institutions, and they are actually interested in more expanding in Texas. And one of the requirements is fiber optics. And that was a requirement for them to host and come to a city like this, because they needed a redundant fiber optic network to build and run off of. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, Kelly.
And I totally agree. I think that all this is all good. It's something else that's going to just another something else that's going to bring something to Jasper. But one thing that I think that we all need to work on, council. We all need to work on our image here in Jasper. And it doesn't matter what you have here. If people see you for somewhere or something that they don't want to be, it don't matter. You can have fiber optic, you can have cable on the poles, you can have streets paved with gold, but that don't mean they don't want to move here. But we need to work on us. And I'm saying this for myself too. I think we all need to be able to communicate better as to what we want to do and what direction we want this city to go in. And I think this is a good direction for the city to go in. But we have to be a little bit more transparent with our public and how we do things. David, I've been working with you and we've been communicating, and I think that's been pretty good. And we've been talking lately. So, and we haven't been. I'll be first to say that. But right now, I think we need to work on council, city officials, and this city's image before we can move forward on anything else.
I would like to encourage all of the citizens of Jasper to please attend our city council meetings. We've had a very sparse crowd of citizens. I would say sometimes maybe 3 or 4 people in the audience. And so I would encourage our citizens to come to our meetings, sign up for the public comment, educate yourself, look at our City of Jasper webpage. That's where you can get information that's going on in your city. And Denise, what is the webpage address?
JasperTX.org.
JasperTX.org. So I would encourage everyone to get the word out. you know, come to the meetings, get on the website, ask questions. We're all available. All of your council people are available to visit with you. That's why we're here. You elected us. And so I would just encourage everyone in that regard.
Mayor, do we have anything else? If not, anybody else have any questions about for Nathan or for Brandon? If not, then I'd like to make a motion that we move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.